Amy Brooks-Kayal. I am one of the two co-directors of the CNCDP-K12 program. And I'm just going to let Brad Schlaggar, who is the PI, and Amber introduce themselves so that you can match a face to a name on the website.
Hey everybody, I'm Brad Schlaggar. I'm, as you just heard, I'm the PI on the CNCDP. I'm also, my day job is the President and CEO of Kennedy Krieger Institute. And Amber?
Excuse me, I missed my voice. I'm Amber Huggins-Battle, and I'm the program coordinator for the CNCDP. And that's legit.
All right.
All right, great. So, and I forgot to introduce who I was. So I am currently the Chief of Pediatric Neurology at University of Colorado and Children's Hospital Colorado. And by October, when we meet again for the retreat, I will have migrated westward, which has been my way over the last couple of decades, and I will be Chair of Neurology at UC Davis. So continuing in my westward progression. Apparently next I have to go to Singapore or something. So hopefully this will be it. No more moves.
Brad,
So
raising his hand. Or no, you're applauding.
He's clapping. He's clapping.
Congratulations.
Very nice. Thank you. So the purpose of today is just to make sure everybody's clear on how to do the full application. We do have some slides that just go over the basics. Then we have some questions that some people have already sent in. And then after that, we expect to have plenty of additional time for other questions. You are welcome to submit your questions via the chat box if you want. You can either do that to everybody, which may be easiest because then people will know if the question they had has already been asked. But if for any reason you don't wish to do that, you can do it privately to Amber, and she will get that question to us. So with that, I won't force everybody to introduce themselves yet, although you will be required to do that at the retreat, so just be prepared for that. I'm gonna share my screen.
And while Amy's doing that, I'll say I'll be watching the participant list too. If somebody raises their hand in there, we can call that out as well. So yes, don't be shy.
Yeah, and actually asking questions verbally remains fully acceptable. So that is fine. But if you could raise your hand, that would help so that we don't have people who may sort of be talking on top of each other, without being able to see that somebody else is getting ready to talk. All right, so you've already met me and Brad and Amber. The other person that you will be interacting with is Jackie Pittman, and she is does research program operations at KKI, and all of the helps to take care of all of the financial aspects of the grant. So she's the other name to know and interact with. All right, let's see why this does not want to let me advance. Let's try that. Okay, so the first and important thing to know is your application due date, August 24th, 2020. So you have time to get your application ready. I heard somebody say August 12th, and that may have been last year. We did that. We did extend it this year because there's been this thing called COVID, and that's caused a lot of people issues. So we're trying to be as flexible as possible. So this is 2 weeks later, a week and a half later than when we have asked for applications in the past. So we wanted everybody to know that. But that said, August 24th is it. It needs to be in by midnight Eastern time on August 24th. If it is late, we apologize in advance. We can't accept it. It's just a matter of fairness, right? Because everybody has the same deadline. So you could keep in your mind that it's August 12th, and then if you're late, you're more than good. You could put on your calendar that it's August 20th and you still have time. But August 24th, we moved it back as far as we could, and we are very serious about that being the final date at which we can accept these applications. And submission is easy. You will submit your PDF to this website. So it is not, our K-12 application is shorter than the full K-08, K-23. It's along the same lines, but we did make it a little bit different and shorter. So just pay attention to the lengths as you go through. So the specific aims is the same. It's one page. You want to structure it in the typical NIH aims format. 2 or 3. It's a 3-year grant. It's a preparation for a individual K award. We do not expect you to cure any neurologic disease as a part of this. So if it appropriate for your application, 2 aims is sufficient, that is more than fine. You know, if 3 works better, that is fine too, but do not feel obligated to put 3 aims down because somebody told you that specific aims always have 3 aims. They don't always have 3 aims. I actually just submitted an R01 with 2 aims, lots of sub aims, but only 2 aims. So it really depends on how your research is structured. There is no magic number of aims. I've never personally seen 1 aim. I think that might be viewed as unusual. I wouldn't go there, but 2 or 3 is fine. 4 is just overreaching. If you need 4 aims, you need to reconsider this is, again, whether or not this is the right mechanism for you. And you want to make sure that you want to give an overall significance, why this is important, remembering that the biggest single reason for doing a K-12 is your personal career development, so you can become a successful independent scientist. The research plan is important because it reflects on you as a potential independent scientist and your mentor and their involvement in helping you to develop a project that is of significance and is also reasonable and feasible and scientifically valid. But the most important thing is how this project is going to help you succeed in becoming an independent scientist. So research plan is only 4 pages. Again, this is shorter, we know, than the K-08 or K-23. The idea being that, this is a project that would lead then to a K-08 or K-23, which would be a bigger project application. So, in this, you can use the same general format that you have for K-08s and K-23s. You want to start with explaining the significance. Again, that's the key to the project. Innovation doesn't, this does not have to be the most innovative project in the world. It doesn't have to use flashy new techniques. It needs to be something that will answer a research question that has some importance and be a great opportunity for you to learn things that are going to, again, help you to be a successful independent scientist in the future. You want to provide some background on why you have chosen this and why you think your approach is going to be a useful one to answer the questions that you pose. We do want to see some hypotheses in this, and then tell us more specifically how you're going to approach it and what methodology you're going to use. One of the hard things in a K award is to differentiate what you may have done in the past versus what your mentor has done versus what has been done in the literature. So, we do encourage for these applications for you to use first person to distinguish what your work has been and what you will be doing specifically as a part of this application. A lot of people like third person. That makes it very hard for us to know what's your work and what is somebody else's work. And at this point in your career, that matters. And then the career development plan, again, which is, almost as long as the research plan, again, giving you a sense of what the, important components of this application are. And this should be done jointly with your mentor, who should be helping you to develop your career development plan. You want to make sure to specify how the K-12 is going to help you in your career development plan, how it's going to lead to a successful progression, again, to an independent award. And typically individual award, typically what we like to see from the K-12 is going on to a K-08 or K-23 award. People ask us, is it possible to go from a K-12 to an R01? Is it possible? Yes. Is it recommended? Not necessarily, because the K08 and K23 awards have significant amount of protected time, which are often very important in preparing yourself to ultimately get an R01 and be an independent investigator. And establishing a timeline of how you are going to utilize the funding from the K-12 for your project and how that will be incorporated into your larger career development is often very helpful. All right, sorry. Computer keeps deciding how it wants to advance. So a few specifics. Again, you want to give just a summary of your career path and your past experience, particularly experience related to research, although you know, how your clinical activity will interact with your research and how it may have led to your particular interest in research is certainly a valid area of discussion. You want to give a very clear self-appraisal of, and to your mentor's appraisal of what your training needs are and how both your proposed research plan as well as your mentor and your mentorship committee are going to meet those needs. So this is where you see, you know, what's called a gap-based plan. So here is the gap that I need to fill in order to be ready to progress to a K08 or K23 application. And this is how we're going to fill that gap. So again, you want to show a systematic plan that is logical, that progresses from your prior clinical research and training experiences. You know, if you are an MD, PhD, and you are, or you've you know, already done a lot of training, you need to really explicitly say what it is that you need in addition to launch yourself into a K08 or a K23 that you do not already have. You know, similarly, if you have been at an institution that has an R25 and you've already had, you know, R25 training, or are planning on doing R25 training in the upcoming year in 2020, 2021, before funding for this would start, we need to understand why you would need the K12 on top of that. Know, again, show us how you're going to use the relevant research and educational experiences of your institution. And then you want to describe any professional responsibilities or activities that you have, including if you are involved in other research projects. Are those going to continue? If so, in what amount of time are they going to be done? And what are your clinical activities and other responsibilities going to be during the period of the K-12? In addition to your career development plan, your mentor needs to provide a statement. And if you have more than one mentor, then everyone should provide a statement up to 3 pages maximum. So the primary mentor should specifically address the availability that they have and what their plan is for mentoring you as a K-12 scholar, their past experience as a mentor, and if their trainees have been successful, and if so, what they have done, what resources the mentor will be able to share with you in order to help your research be successful, and your mentor's current funding. Because again, you know, part of you being successful is your mentor being successful and having an active research program in which you can take part as a K-12 scholar. You want to make sure that your mentor is explicit about how often you're going to meet, and you know, what those meetings will consist of on a general basis. If you have multiple mentors, you want to explicitly talk about how the mentorship team as a whole is going to meet, not just how you're going to meet with individual mentors, but how often everyone is going to get together to make sure you're all on the same page, and how that mentorship plan is really going to lead to you being successful in getting an individual K award. Your primary mentor has up to 2 pages. If you have co-mentors and secondary mentors, they together can have another page. So everything from the mentors can be 3 pages total. And then you combine all of that together in order to upload it in the mentor field. And then NIH BioSketches, which again, you can use the current NIH BioSketch form that I believe just came out in March. So use the updated form. It has a 5-page maximum on it. So again, it's a good way to start getting your NIH BioSketch in place. Your mentors will almost certainly already have one, but make sure that it's updated. And then if you don't have one, work with your mentor to learn how to do a good NIH BioSketch. Then equally importantly is the statement of institutional support. So this needs to be written by someone who actually has control over institutional support. So that can be your department chair. If you are in a section that has, you know, a purview over resources, you can write institutional support. The section head can write those institutional support letters, but it needs to be somebody that actually can provide that support. It should not be your mentor, because they won't necessarily have purview over that. They need to confirm that you have a faculty appointment, and that should you be awarded the K12, that you will have 75% of your full professional effort devoted specifically to the K12 research and your research career development. And this is where, if you are involved in another research project that is not related to the K12, you need to specify that that would need to be separate from this 75%. Similarly, clinical effort, it cannot be more than 25% or less than that if there is other research effort or administrative effort that you'll be expected to spend on that other 25%. And make sure that you provide whoever is writing that letter of institutional support with the very explicit rules that we have regarding how clinical effort is calculated, right? So a half day of outpatient clinic is 10% effort. A week of full-time service, you know, in the hospital, no matter what kind of service, is considered 2% effort. On-call responsibilities cannot be considered a part of the protected research time. So that's important. Yes, Brad.
I just wanted to chime in on the percent effort. Please do not say that your clinical effort is 25% and then you've got 75% protected time. 25% of clinical effort, 75% protected time, that adds up to 100%, leaves no time for administrative work that is part of being a faculty member, period. So when we see 25% going all the way up to your full FTE, we recognize that you're probably not being protected for the other obligations that you have as a faculty member, compliance, other work that you have to do that does not go into either professional career development or seeing patients. So I recommend that your clinical effort be no more than actually 20% and that you leave 5% for administrative activities.
Right. And some of that also depends on how your institution calculates clinical effort. So I will say that here in Colorado, 100% clinical effort is 8 half days a week, because they include 20% administrative time in that clinical effort calculation. But this is where, when you look at how we say to calculate it, it will be very, very clear. If you're doing a half day a week plus you're doing, you know, 6 weeks of service, you should be fine. And so, or 5 weeks of service. So, but I agree with Brad. You don't want to push that up to, you know, 25% exactly, because that is going to mean that if you attend a single faculty meeting or have any administrative or committee responsibilities, which almost all of us do, you will end up eating into that 75% protected time. again, the statement needs to be very explicit about exactly what you're going to do, not just say, 22% clinical effort and leave it there. And again, vacation time cannot be coming exclusively from your protected research time. That needs to be evenly and appropriately distributed. And then, it's also important that the institute, whoever is signing this for your institution, understands that acceptance of the 3-year K-12 award means that they commit to potentially providing 50% or more protected time for research subsequent to the end of the 3 years of K-12 funding if you have not yet been successful in obtaining K-08 or K-23 funding. And this would need to continue for a minimum of 18 months. Now, this assumes that you have been productive as a CNCDP K-12 scholar and that you have actually submitted a K-08 or K-23 application. You can't not be productive, not do research, not publish, not submit K-08 or K-23 applications and then expect your institution to continue to support you. So this is all predicated on our expectation that you will be a committed and productive scientist, which I am sure that all of you would do. But just so you know, it is not a get out of jail free card if you are not being productive in your research. And the other thing that's important from your institution is for it to help us understand how the anticipated costs of your research are going to be covered. So in addition to funding a set amount for your salary and benefits, we provide, the K-12 award provides $38,000 towards research resources. But for some, depending on the type of research you're doing, that may not be sufficient. And in that case, it's really important that we understand where your institution is going to get those additional resources from, and whether that will come from your department or from your mentor. But we do want to make sure that you are set up to be successful in your research. So that is that's sort of our preview of what we had planned. We did have a few questions that people sent in advance. And we'll go through those, and then Amber can tell me if there's anything in the chat box and or if anything has been sent to her. So one question was about resubmission. So if you submitted last year and your application unfortunately was not successful and we were not able to fund it, you can reapply. And then the question is, if you reapply, how do you best structure that? And we're going to, again, try to make it very similar to what you do for a standard grant submission to NIH for your K-08 or K-23, which is you're allowed to provide something called an introduction. And you should have done this for your LOIs if you are reapplying. And so that same introduction, you could tweak it if it ends up being slightly different as you ended up writing the full application. But basically that introduction should let us know how you responded to the critiques that you got back last year. So this is, these were the, this is how I responded to each critique. The way that I generally structure that is that I look over the 3 critiques that you have, look for themes that appear in multiple reviews and address those first specifically, and then if there are other particular issues that are brought up only by like a single reviewer, then maybe mention those afterwards. Other people do it by individual reviewer 1 and then 2 and then 3. You'll find that there's often redundancy there, so that sometimes can be hard to fit into a single page. And again, you only get 1 page to respond to those critiques. And then typically, if you can refer the reviewers as specifically as possible to where you have made those changes in the application. And then you can, if you wish, mark the application, but often it's just better, I find it better just to refer to it in the introduction, because otherwise it can get a little busy in the application itself. But that's how you let us know what you have done that has, that has been modified from the previous submission, so that we can look at that. Anybody have questions about that or anything else you want to add about that, Brad?
No, I think you covered it very nicely, Amy.
All right.
There is so we can go through the roster of questions here, but I just wanted to make sure we didn't miss. So Ben, while we're talking about the institutional support letter, asked about whether it needs to talk about, he used the term bridge funding, but I think he's referring to the gap between what the CNCDP provides and the rest of your 75% effort. So basically when the support letter says that they will provide protected time for 75% of your effort, recognizing that the CNCDP does not provide likely full 75%, they are saying that they will fund it. They don't have to say how, by what source, whether it's clinical dollars or philanthropy or whatever. They are saying that the institution will provide that protected time so that you're not seeking other resources to cover that effort to make up for that full protected time.
So, but it's important to note that what we cannot do as a program is require a specific salary.
Right.
So I will tell you that there are a few institutions in the country, not a lot, but there are a few institutions that say, okay, for 75% of your salary, you get what the K-12 gives you, which is, Amber, correct me, is it $85,000?
It is $85,000.
$85,000. Which is not 75% of most faculty salaries around the country. But we can't require them to give you more than what we give them for that 75%. The vast majority of institutions do it, but all we can require is that they promise us that for that $85,000, they will protect 75% of your time for research related to the CNCDP and research development. Yeah, so that is a conversation you should have with your institution in advance.
This blended approach to salary, it's not the predominant approach, but it definitely happens. And as Amy said, we are not able to get involved in a negotiation around that. That's an institutional decision. We can only hold their feet to the fire regarding the protected time, and we do. We take that very seriously. But we can't get involved in the salary piece.
The next question is about the effect of the pandemic and the recession on CNCDP funding. Fortunately, we have not seen any cut in the CNCDP funding from the NIH, and importantly, the NIH has allowed us to be more flexible with the funding. So actually for scholars this year, if they were unable to use their funding because of laboratory closures, we are allowing them to carry that forward into this coming year, starting July 1st of this year, which is not something we had actually been allowed to do before. So the NIH is showing flexibility related to this. We do have existent funding to fund the full 3 years of the scholars that we will appoint that we will select this October and that we will appoint next year. And then we have already submitted and gotten approval for, although not full notification of funding for the next 5-year cycle. So we are good. If we give you this award, the money will be there. I don't know, Brad, if there's anything else you want to comment on that.
Yeah, I'll just say that one of the consequences of the mechanism for this program to go from being primarily positioned at institutions to centralized, we have it at Kennedy Krieger for the national program, is that we subcontract out to all of your institutions. And so there's part and parcel of that is the willingness to give us greater license for how exactly we interact as a contract subcontract relationship. That benefits the scholars significantly, and that's playing out right now in the in this pandemic era.
Okay, everybody okay on that one? Amber, nothing in chat box, we're good?
No, we're good.
Okay.
Brett's been
Okay. Then preliminary data. This is always a question for the K-12. So the answer is any preliminary data required? No, no preliminary data is required. How do we use preliminary data? We use preliminary data as a way to show the reviewers what, how you think, what you have previously done in the lab, what your experience is. And again, it helps us to judge the likelihood that if you get this K-12, you're going to go on to become a successful independent investigator. So if you have preliminary data, you should absolutely include it, because again, it points to those things for your reviewers. Are you disadvantaged if you don't have any preliminary data? Potentially, if you have no other way of demonstrating to the reviewers the likelihood that you are going to be successful. So if you don't have any preliminary data related to this previous project, what you want to do is make sure that it's clear to the reviewers what previous research you have done or previous experience that you have had that will assure them that you're likely to utilize this training period to be a successful investigator. And again, it's just, we have the very difficult task of choosing between many talented applicants to provide a limited number of awards. So we have to judge who is most likely to be successful. So anything you can put into your application that is going to help your reviewers believe you are going to be successful is going to be to your advantage, but you don't have to specifically have preliminary data related to your the K-12 project that you are proposing. Does that make sense to everybody? Anybody have any questions about that? This is always a big area of question and concern. So I want to take a minute here for people.
Hi, this is Danielle Barber.
Hi, Danielle.
Hi, thank you, Amy. I just want to say thank you because that really helps clarify. Perhaps I'm speaking just for myself, or maybe with the concern of some others as well, that the concern about the preliminary data is always like, does this make you confident that my research proposal will move ahead in a successful way, or is this really just in evidence of the likelihood that I will go on to become an independent, successful physician scientist? And that's really helpful to know that that's the perspective that you're looking at for the preliminary data.
Danielle, can I add that, so when we do the review of the applications, it looks kind of like a study section, and everybody around the table has been in study section and knows very well what that's like, but it's not a study section. We're not driven by an NIH approach. We know what we want to see. And Amy's been running the studies, our version of the study section from the inception of the national program. So if there's a reviewer at the table who is finding their way to say, I'd like to see some preliminary data, we pull them back to what our expectations are and what our instructions are. And we make clear that that's not a criterion for an application. That, unfortunately, that doesn't always happen at NIH study section, where you don't get that kind of clarity or pulling reviewers back. We get to do that, and I think it's one of the advantages of us being in this for the long haul and having a group of faculty who really understand what our objectives are.
That's really helpful to hear that perspective. Thank you.
So the other thing to remember, if you don't have preliminary data, is that you want to be very clear about why you think this project is going to be feasible and a good training experience for you. So you know, the caveat to no preliminary data is you need to in some other way justify why this is going to be a good project that's going to be a good training experience. A project that has no chance of being successful, from which you're going to get no useful data, is not going to be a good way to advance your career, right? It's you know, it's not going to provide you with publications. It's not going to provide you with a good format on which to apply for a K-08 or K-23. So, you know, again, you don't need preliminary data. That is the bottom line. But if you don't have it, tell us, explain to us why you and your mentor are absolutely convinced that this particular project is going to be worthwhile and is going to advance you and prepare you for a successful K-08 and K-23 application. So just keep that in mind. Remember, our ultimate goal, the number one thing in this application, in this grant, is not the results of your research. It is the results of you. It's all, this is all about you and you being successful as an independent investigator. That is what we are judged on as a you know, as a program. And if our CNCDP scholars are not successful, we won't, like I said, we get the next 5 years, but we won't get the 5 years after that. So we know what we're judged on, and so that's what we're judging you guys on.
So we are judged on the success of our scholars, and I would add also all of our applicants. So we have structured our own outcome measures based on not just those, the subset that get the direct K-12 funding, but we want everybody who's participating in this process, all of the applicants, to have to be successful as well. So in addition to the funding that we are providing through this mechanism, we're also providing curriculum, the experience of the attending to the retreat, virtual or in person, this year virtual, and the curriculum
Webinars throughout the year.
In the meantime, we want everybody to the whole goal of this is to broaden the base of child neurology physician scientists to become independent investigators. That's why the NINDS is investing in this, and that's what our charge is. So we want this to be an enriching experience, even if it's the case that you are not among the ones who have been funded.
Yeah, and that's important, because unfortunately it will be the minority of you that we are going to be able to provide 3 years of funding support for. And although that breaks our heart, it is what it is. But that doesn't mean that we can't, you know, your reviewers can't help you with your application, can't provide useful critiques. Part of the reason we have in-person interviews is so we can talk to you, which is not allowed. Reviewers are not allowed to talk directly to candidates for the typical NIH process. You know, when you meet with your reviewers, they're going to give you very clear recommendations about what they like and what they don't like, and you can talk through that with them, which is very unique to this particular program. And that all has incredible benefits. It's basically a pre-K review application that can help you whether or not we're able to provide you funding. And again, once you've applied and you're a member of our family, you can keep coming to the webinars. If you need, you know, if you wish to, you can always reapply. Brenda Porter and Heather Fullerton, who are in charge of our mentorship, frequently will help you get set up with mentors that around the country who are related to your field and can provide career guidance, again, whether or not you end up being funded. So we really do want this to be of benefit to any early career investigator in child neurology who wants to avail themselves of what our program has to offer. Last question that we have written in advance is, if an applicant is awarded CNCDP funding, what additional financial support is the institution expected to provide? I think we sort of talked about that, but just to review, we expect them to provide a make whole of the 75%, depending on what 75% of your salary ends up being. We expect them to provide that gap in salary and benefits between what the K-12 provides and and what that actual cost is, but we cannot dictate what they set as your salary. We expect them to provide additional resources as needed to supplement the $38,000 that we provide. So if it's very clear your research is going to cost much more than that per year, we want to know where that money is going to come from. And then the really big ask that your institution needs to agree to is up to 50% protected research time for up to 18 months after the end of the 3 years. And that's probably the largest single item that we ask the institution to commit to. But it makes sense. Trust us when we tell you it makes sense for them, because if they can get you successfully onto a K-8 or K-23, then that will be very good for the institution. And so it is, again, if your institution believes in you, they typically will not hesitate to make that commitment. And that's one of the ways that we know that your institution is committed to your success.
Some things that we like to see but aren't required, that make it for a strong mentor letter or institutional support document, include from the mentor, this applicant, my mentee, has access to all the resources that I have available in my laboratory. Statements along those lines. From the institutional support, all departmental shared resources are available to this faculty member. Just statements that clearly describe the facilitated access within the lab or within a facility or a department or an institution that is stated with assurance that you'll have access to it. Demonstrates an awareness of the need beyond the $38,000 and the $85K of salary support, what it takes to make it work.
All right, I'm just looking at the questions. It looks like Brad's got most of these. Bibliography is separate in terms of page limits, and I do not believe we have a page limit on the bibliography. This is a good question. This is from Ron. My research mentor is also my department chair. Should he prepare separate letters for the mentor statement and institutional support, or a single letter? I think it would be better to have separate letters. And if Brad wants to disagree with me, he can do that. And here is why. One is very sort of financial. You know, we support this person, but this is nuts and bolts of the money we're going to provide. And yes, we are going to agree to all of these sources of support. The mentor letter is really very different, as you saw, and really about how often you're going to meet, what, how the mentorship relationship is going to work, resources available in his laboratory that you will have access to, how he will work with other co-mentors. So I think squishing all of those together is going to put you at a disadvantage. You want it very explicit in each letter that he is making the appropriate commitments.
So I would never disagree with you, Amy. So it's important to have separate letters. The institutional support letter is not about the person who wrote it. It's the institution.
Right.
So suppose, Ron, your chair decides to move somewhere. Now maybe—
Oh, that never happens, Brad.
That never happens, right. Or decides my tenure as chair, I want to step away and do something else, or be dean, or whatever. That letter that's written it stands alone. It's a statement of institutional permanence that unless something else changes, will continue to be the letter that states the support for you as an individual. So it's independent of the mentorship letter. So the same person can write both letters, but they have to be written clearly with different hats on.
Great, that's really helpful. Thank you.
And then do most K-12 recipients have co-mentors? one recent seminar suggested co-mentors are common, if not expected. Co-mentors are common. I will say that the concept of a mentorship team is becoming more and more typical in both our K-12 applications as well as in K-08 and K-23 applications. I would say that each co-mentor needs to have a specific role. So I'll use an example of a neurosurgery colleague that I'm a mentor for at Colorado, and she has a technical mentor who's a PhD physiologist. I am a mentor sort of for epilepsy research more generally, and also for the issues related to being a physician scientist and balancing clinical care and research activities. And then she has a neurosurgical mentor who is also a neurosurgical physician or surgeon scientist who, again, some of the unique issues of balancing being a surgeon and being a basic scientist. So if your particular research area involves two very different things, one you're doing physiology and one you're doing single nuclei RNA-seq or something, and you may have very different mentors to learn those two techniques. And that may make you very unique in the ability to then do all of those techniques when you finish, which would, again, position you very well to be successful, but it may not be the same person can provide mentorship in learning all of those different approaches and things.
Yeah, it gets back to the gap plan idea. So your career development plan is gap based. So mentorship may be the facilitated mechanism to help you fill that gap. So the configuration of your team needs to make sense for you and your specific program. I will say that I think when I see a physician scientist being mentored primarily or solely by a basic investigator who does not live the life of the physician scientist, I think it's a good idea to make sure part of your team is somebody who really gets what the life is like. And again, it's not required, but my personal preference is to round out a team for the career development standpoint, from the career development standpoint, to have somebody in your corner who really understands what the challenges are in a career pathway that includes being a physician scientist.
All right, so co-mentors we are Amber is going to either post the slides or distribute them. I don't know what you're going to do.
I've distributed them already.
Outstanding. And I believe this is being recorded, yes, and will be posted to the website. So if you really enjoyed the narration and want to listen to it again.
We're not going to post it. We're going to just basically ask anybody who wants to have if you want to see it again, just request the link. If somebody who wasn't able to join wants it, they'll request it of Amber and we'll send the link to it. But didn't want to broadcast all of your questions to the world.
Excellent.
Not that everybody in the world is caring so much about the CNCDP website, but just in case.
You never can tell.
Yeah.
Can I ask another question related to the mentor?
Absolutely.
And thinking about this from a gap-based perspective, I have a primary mentor and a secondary mentor, but some of the techniques that I proposed and some of the plan that I'm proposing in my research project, I would like that to be filled by other people, and I envision them to be as kind of a committee, like a K committee. Mm-hmm. I would like to include that in my career development plan, but I don't know, because I don't consider them directly my mentor or my primary mentor. Would you want a letter of support from them separately? Would you want me to include that in with the secondary mentor? Are you looking for kind of mentoring committees as well, or just a primary mentor?
We are looking for what you need to be successful. So, and not everybody that you learn from has to be a mentor, right? So you could have people that are consultants and will, or that you're just going to go and spend a few months, you know, learning a technique in their lab. But it should be clearly outlined in your career development plan, and it should be clearly outlined in your mentor's statement. So if there are people who are not going to be formal mentors on your mentorship team, your primary mentor should discuss the role that they're going to have in your mentorship in his or her letter, and should talk about how they're going to interact with them. And again, that's important. As you get into the mentorship team, the upside is that you can get, you know, different perspectives and different information. The downside is that if you don't carefully manage that communication, your 3 or 4 mentors can be telling you 3 or 4 different things. And then you feel like you're caught in the middle of this. And no matter how long you've been doing this, this can definitely happen. Dr. Schlaggar is the external mentor for one of our K-12 scholars at Colorado. And when he first came in to do his site visit, he said, you guys all need to get together, and your scholar needs to have you all in the same room, or now all in the same Zoom room, at least, you know, 2 to 3 times a year, so that you all know what each of you is saying to him, and he's not trying to, you know, try to figure out how to balance what may be different recommendations. So think about your communication plan and how your different mentors are going to communicate with you and also with each other, so that you're not getting conflicting information.
I want to take this opportunity to put in a plug for taking the BioSketch seriously. That slide just had the fewest words of all our slides, just said NIH BioSketches, applicant and mentors. It's not a nuisance. It's how we as reviewers size up the information that you're providing us about the capacity for this person that you're saying is your mentor or co-mentor to do what you say they're going to do. We don't want to have to dig, search, look up their work, look up some YouTube video they've made about their work. We want to be able to see on that document that there's the information's available that comports with the statement that they're really qualified to be your mentor. So don't just view it as a perfunctory part of the application. Individualize the BioSketch statement and content to make it align with the application.
Yeah, and if you have not done an NIH BioSketch before, the first section of it relates to this particular application. So look at your mentor's BioSketch and make sure that it talks about your project and mentoring you and their qualifications for being a mentor, and doesn't talk about the collaboration that they have and why they're qualified to be PI on this R01, right? Because if they just send you their most recent BioSketch, it may or may not have been appropriately adjusted. So, you know, there is a thing like mentor management, and you need to engage in that. You need to see their mentor statements. You've now heard a lot about what our expectations are. You know, they may or may not realize that. So if you read their mentor statement and they are not addressing the key points that we just mentioned to you, you need, in a good mentor-mentee relationship, you need to go to them and say, you know what, they made it very clear they wanted X, Y, and Z. I don't see that here. Can we work on this, and make sure he or she has a copy of your career development plan so that they can reference that in their mentor statement. Again, if the career development plan says one thing and the mentor statement says something else, then that tells us that your mentor is not very invested, because they don't even know what your career development plan is. And those are all telltale signs to us about, you know, mentor relationships that are not going to be highly successful. All right, 2 minutes left. Anything else?
I'll ask one more if.
I like this, Danielle. You're intrepid.
Okay. I have my current draft of my career development plan takes really my training gaps and lays it out in a big table. And so a full page of it is one big table. And I think is pretty clear about what the gaps are, how I'm going to fill them, and which mentor will support me in doing that. That said, of all the example K grants I've seen, I've never seen such a big table, and I am concerned that it may be not unorthodox or not the approach that you typically like to see. If you'd prefer to have it written out in text, I can rearrange it. I'm not sure if
it sounds great, assuming it's easy to read. So is it unorthodox? Yes. Have I seen a table like that? No. That doesn't mean that someone hasn't submitted one. But if it succinctly provides information, it may be great. The one thing that I would recommend is that sometimes tables that are very clear to you are not clear to others. I would have somebody that is not one of your mentors, but preferably a senior investigator who has, had some experience with training grants before, look at it and make sure that when they read it, it is clear to them. And if the less experience the less they know about your background, the better. So just have somebody else look at it and make sure it's as clear as you want to. But as you may know, for some of these institutional like T awards and even institutional K awards, tables are exactly what we're asked to submit. Tables can be a really great way to provide lots of information in a small space, if they're done correctly.
perfect. Thank you.
All right, Daniel's going to lab meeting. Excellent, good. I'm always in support of going to lab meeting. All right, well, if we don't, we are actually 1 minute over. So if there are not any other burning questions, I would refer you back to Amber, the CNCDP email. We are always available for questions if anyone has them. Again, do not miss the deadline. Plan on sending it in the day before just to be safe. But any other questions that come up, you are, you're more than welcome. One question that we did not address, but we sometimes get is budget. Do we have to do a formal budget for this? And the answer is no. You get a set amount of money. We anticipate that you will use it correctly. So don't worry if your grants office says, why isn't there a budget and a budget justification page? Now, that said, your grants office may require it even though we don't, in order to do internal routing. So if they tell you you have to do budget, you have to do a budget because you just have to do what they tell you.
Yeah.
And you do have to, even though you will submit this directly to the CNCDP website, please remember to notify your grants office of your institution, because if you get awarded this and your grants office didn't know you submitted it, it's not going to be pleasant and we're not going to be able to get you out of that. So let your grants office know that you are submitting it just as you would if you were submitting. Thanks, everybody. Have a good rest of your day.